Can you basically just go over what is happening at the U.S. border right now?
Well, there's been a big change in policy. The administration had been using a Trump-era policy called Title 42, which was an instant expulsion. And everybody who crossed was subject to being immediately removed to Mexico without the benefit of being able to seek asylum. This is very important because the ability to seek asylum has been abused by millions and millions of people for years and years. And so it was a very unique kind of policy that the executive was able to use that forestalled a lot of illegal immigration. The problem is that the Biden administration, when it took office, cut massive exemptions in Title 42 for all kinds of nationalities and demographics, and they essentially gutted it anyway. They were using little remnants, kind of rump policy remnants of it to push some people back, a few people back. But anyway, they finally just got rid of it. It's over. It was over on May 11th, and they put in place a new policy that is just kind of the old policy before Title 42, which was massively abused for asylum. So everybody now has access to the asylum system again. The administration has been claiming that it's called expedited removal, that expedited removal will be kind of Trumpian and everybody's going to get pushed back and nobody's going to want to try it and they'll stay back in Mexico. But what's happening instead is that they are starting to figure out the loopholes. And there was a pause on May 12th in this huge surge of migration, tens of thousands. I think they had 10,000 in one day, the most ever in the history of America. Also, that was just the latest most ever in the history of America, but that's another part of the story. And they expected that surge to continue after May 12 with expedited removal. The numbers have dropped. They haven't come through by the expected surge for several reasons, but one reason is that they came up with this other new policy that is allowing tens of thousands of people a day to come in escorted through the ports of entry, not between the ports of entry and the brush. So they're just bringing them in all along the border underneath the porticos of the ports of entry. If you've ever been there, you know, the pedestrian bridge like this, and there's, you know, a covering, an awning over it. And so you can't see these tens of thousands of people being brought in on permits, humanitarian permits that they're just handing out without any sort of vetting at all. So most of the mass migration is continuing, but you can't see it and the media doesn't understand it. So they're not looking under those porticos. I understand it, so I'm looking under the porticos and videotaping all the hundreds and thousands of people under there moving into the country. The other way that people are coming in is that they have discovered that when they apply for asylum, they cross illegally and apply for asylum. This is different than getting the humanitarian permits and being brought in under the porticos of the buildings of the ports of entry. You can still cross in illegally, they've discovered, apply for asylum and get another permit and get brought into the country. And so that is now happening on a large scale, unreported completely. I think I remain the only writer in America that has reported on this, that they have figured out a way to get right through the new Biden policy, which is exactly as we predicted. Some of us predicted exactly how they would. And then the third way that they're coming through is as runners, the people that don't want to get caught crossing illegally. Some do, they turn themselves in and then they get in, but others will go through the humanitarian permit under the porticos into the country. But the criminals know that they're not going to be let under either one of those, so they're running. So there's this huge surge of runners who are just dodging and weaving at the border, trying to get in past the Border Patrol all over West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, really rural, outlying areas. These are going to be mostly your criminals who know that they wouldn't qualify for entry under the other two ways. And so that number is rapidly rising. So that's kind of a general. There are three ways that they're getting in. The mass migration continues. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Just as many people are coming as before Title 42, and in historic and astronomical numbers.
Can we dive into those numbers a little bit? Like, do we have any idea what the true amount of migrants that are coming across? Because as you highlighted, this was all over the media about how there was that expectation that once Title 42 expired, there was going to be a mass migration. And then quickly, you had different people within the Biden administration, you had different media conglomerates basically pointing at those numbers and saying, look, this didn't happen. This was all an overreaction, whatever it might be. But as you're highlighting right here, I mean, the migration numbers far exceed probably even what anybody is thinking in their head, but they're kind of being hidden. So do we have any idea what these actual numbers even look like?
So the first category I told you about, those are the humanitarian permit things that they're giving out in Mexico. On May 12th, that thing's been blowing and going for quite a while already, since January. It really ramped up in January. At that point, they had authorized 360,000 a year to be brought in that way through the ports of entry. But those were mostly just four nationalities: Cubans, Haitians, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans. The fact of the matter, and what they never told you, is that program was open to every nationality in the world. They just didn't say it. So beyond the 360,000 annually, we don't know what the rest of the nationalities make up, because they are hiding those numbers. They will not release those numbers. Congress has asked for those numbers. I put in a FOIA for those numbers. I am suing for those numbers right now as we speak. Hopefully the lawsuit will prevail and we will get those numbers. On May 12th, the Biden administration announced that it was going to absolutely open the spigot wide on that illegal program, bringing all those people in on these bogus humanitarian permits. And they did. So I'm getting reports from all along the border, sources that are telling me that the lines of people with those humanitarian permits, those bogus, illegal humanitarian permits, are hundreds and hundreds of yards long. They're bringing them through that way. Those people conveniently will not be counted as illegal crossers. So when they take their victory lap next month and say, God, the number of illegal crossers dive bombed, they're not going to tell you that the number of those crossers went through the stratosphere. So they're going to give you the half of the story and leave the other half out. But the bottom line is that they're not telling us what the other half is. We're going to have to force it out of them, shame them into it, or litigate it out of them, because it is a terrible number. Whatever that number is going to be in the very high hundreds of thousands and maybe even into the millions once we discover how wide they opened the spigot on that thing on May 12th. We just know that so many are coming. As for runners, we do have a little bit of an idea on runners. We have they don't provide those numbers, but they get leaked all the time. And we know that since January of 2021, about 1.7 million people snuck into the country undetected over the border. Massive world record on that. Never seen anything like that before. We're looking at probably anywhere from 30 to 70,000 a month of those. I think it's going to be on the upper end of the scale this month and next month and future months, because a lot of people don't qualify for that under the sneak them in over the ports of entry program because they'll have criminal records. A lot of those people also probably don't want to wait in line for those humanitarian paroles. The wait is going to be long. And so for the people that don't want to wait, they're just going to cross in and go illegally one way or another. They'll either run or turn themselves in. So those numbers right now are, we're probably going to be somewhere in the 250,000 range next month, maybe more. It all just depends on how they're counting and whether we can get our numbers. But it's going to be in the hundreds of thousands for sure.